Mother Teresa, A Life of Compassion, Faith and Unyielding Service. Inspiring Lessons from the Life of the Saint of Calcutta. By T.M. Light. Description: discover the inspiring life and legacy of Mother Teresa in this powerful and motivational book. It explores her unwavering faith, compassionate service, ethical leadership, and resilience in the face of adversity. From her early calling to founding the Missionaries of Charity, readers will uncover practical lessons on humility, purpose, and living a life of meaningful impact. Perfect for those seeking spiritual growth, personal development, and inspiration, this uplifting story reveals how small acts of love can transform communities and change the world through courage, devotion, and selfless service. Chapter Outline. Introduction: The Heart of Service. Chapter 1: Early Life in Skopje. Chapter 2: The Call to Religious Life. Chapter 3: Life in Calcutta and Initial Challenges. Chapter 4: Founding the Missionaries of Charity. Chapter 5: A Life of Compassion in Action. Chapter 6: Global Recognition and Influence. Chapter 7: Challenges, Criticism, and Resilience. Chapter 8: Spiritual Wisdom and Teachings. Chapter 9: Legacy of Love and Service. Chapter 10: Living the Lessons of Mother Teresa. Conclusion: A Life that Transformed the World. Introduction: The Heart of Service. There are lives that leave footprints so profound, so enduring, that they cannot be measured merely by years lived or titles held. They are lives that echo across generations, transcending borders, cultures, and time itself. Mother Teresa's life is one of those rare and luminous journeys. Born Angeze Gonje Boyaju in Skopje, Macedonia, in 1910, she became a symbol of unwavering compassion, selfless service, and spiritual devotion. Her story is not just a biography of a remarkable woman, it is a manual for living a life of purpose, a map for cultivating the courage to serve others, and a testament to the transformative power of love and faith in action. From the very beginning, Mother Teresa's life was marked by humility and spiritual sensitivity. Her family, though not wealthy, instilled in her the values of faith, empathy, and moral responsibility. Even as a child, she demonstrated a profound awareness of the needs of those around her, and a deep desire to dedicate herself to a higher purpose. These early experiences laid the foundation for a life that would challenge the conventions of comfort, prestige, and self-interest, and instead embrace a path defined by selflessness, courage, and moral clarity. The essence of Mother Teresa's impact lies in her radical commitment to serve the poorest of the poor. When she arrived in Calcutta as a young nun, she was confronted with a reality that many of us struggle to comprehend: destitution, illness, neglect, and suffering on an unimaginable scale. Yet, instead of retreating or succumbing to despair, she leaned into the challenge. She saw humanity in every person, dignity in every life, and the presence of God in those whom society had forgotten. Her response was not only compassionate but proactive. She founded the Missionaries of Charity, an order devoted to serving the sick, the dying, the abandoned, and the marginalized. Through this work, she demonstrated that genuine service is not a performative act, it is a lifestyle, a daily commitment to empathy, patience, and relentless love. What makes Mother Teresa extraordinary is not just the magnitude of her work, but the spirit in which it was carried out. She approached each life she touched with an equal measure of respect and tenderness. Every act, no matter how small, was executed with intentionality and grace. She taught the world that the smallest gestures of love, feeding one child, comforting one dying person, listening to one lonely soul, carry the power to transform lives. Her life reminds us that significance does not come from grandiose acts alone, but from the consistent, deliberate choice to act with compassion, even when unnoticed, unrewarded, or undervalued by the world. This book is written not merely to recount her biography, but to illuminate the principles that made her life so impactful and enduring. Readers will journey alongside Mother Teresa through her early formation, the calling that led her to India, the founding of her mission, and the countless acts of courage, compassion, and service that defined her decades of ministry. Along the way, we will explore the practical lessons embedded in her life, how to cultivate resilience in the face of overwhelming challenges, how to maintain unwavering faith under pressure, and how to transform empathy into purposeful action. Each chapter aims to inspire, guide, and motivate readers to examine their own lives and consider how they too can live with courage, compassion, and intention. Mother Teresa's life also teaches an essential lesson about perspective. In a world that often celebrates wealth, status, and external achievements, she demonstrated that true value is measured by the depth of our love, the integrity of our actions, and the courage to confront suffering wherever it exists. Her unwavering commitment to service is a call to action for every reader, to recognize the humanity in others, to stand for justice and compassion, and to embrace the responsibilities that come with privilege, talent, and opportunity. Her life is a reminder that service is not a distant ideal but a present, actionable reality. It begins in our communities, within our homes, and extends outward to touch the world. Faith for Mother Teresa was both a personal anchor and the engine of her service. Her unwavering belief in God's presence, guidance, and love allowed her to endure extreme hardships, poverty, illness, criticism, and the constant weight of responsibility, without faltering in her mission. Her spiritual strength was not passive. It fueled action, informed ethical choices, and provided clarity when navigating complex moral landscapes. For readers seeking guidance, her life demonstrates that faith is not a distant abstraction but a practical daily force that empowers courage, persistence, and compassionate leadership. Another defining lesson from her journey is the power of humility. Despite global recognition, including the Nobel Peace Prize, Mother Teresa remained profoundly humble. She never sought fame, nor did she allow accolades to distract her from her mission. Her humility was not self-effacing in a passive sense. It was active, intentional, and rooted in an understanding of her role as a servant rather than a ruler. In a culture obsessed with self-promotion and personal gain, her example teaches us that true leadership, influence, and impact arise not from seeking recognition, but from aligning actions with purpose, integrity, and the greater good. This book also emphasizes the practical dimensions of Mother Teresa's life, the daily habits, the routines of discipline, and the mindset that allowed her to persevere. While her compassion may seem extraordinary, it was grounded in consistency, preparation, and the cultivation of inner strength. She treated service as a vocation, a deliberate choice to prioritize the needs of others above personal comfort, and she modeled a life in which ethical clarity, spiritual devotion, and practical action were inseparable. By studying her routines, choices, and philosophies, readers can uncover actionable strategies to integrate service, compassion, and ethical leadership into their own lives. As we embark on this journey through Mother Teresa's life, it is important to recognize that her story is not only about extraordinary deeds, but about ordinary courage made consistent, ordinary love made intentional, and ordinary people rising to extraordinary purpose. The lessons she embodies are not reserved for saints or mystics, they are accessible to each of us. Compassion, resilience, and faith-driven action are cultivated through intention, reflection, and daily practice. By learning from her example, we can find inspiration to confront our own challenges, serve those in need, and act with integrity, humility, and courage in our communities and beyond. In closing, the heart of Mother Teresa's life was service, a service born of love, strengthened by faith, and sustained by unwavering moral courage. This book seeks to honor that legacy by offering readers not only a biography, but a blueprint for living a life of meaningful impact. Through her story, we are invited to ask ourselves, how can I serve? Where can I offer love? How can I act with courage when faced with adversity? Mother Teresa's life answers these questions with clarity, depth, and enduring inspiration. Her journey is a testament to the power of one person to touch countless lives, a reminder that every act of compassion matters, and a call for all of us to embrace the transformative potential of love in action. As you turn the pages of this book, prepare to be inspired, challenged, and motivated. Prepare to witness a life in which faith, humility, and service converged to create a legacy that continues to illuminate the world. And, most importantly, prepare to reflect on your own capacity to cultivate compassion, resilience, and purpose-driven action in your own life. The heart of service is not reserved for the extraordinary. It beats within each of us, waiting to be awakened, nurtured, and expressed in deeds that matter. Mother Teresa's life shows us the path, but the journey is ours to take. Chapter 1: Early Life in Scorpio. Every life has a beginning, but some beginnings foreshadow destinies far beyond what anyone could imagine. The story of Mother Teresa begins in Skopje, a city that was then part of the Ottoman Empire, and later became the capital of what is now North Macedonia. Born on August 26, 1910, as Angeze Gonje Boyagiu, she entered the world into a family that, though humble in material wealth, was rich in faith, values, and love. Her father, Nicola Boyagiu, was a businessman known for his integrity, while her mother, Dranophile, was a woman of profound devotion, who instilled in her children a deep respect for God, compassion for others, and a sense of responsibility that would echo throughout Mother Teresa's entire life. From these earliest days, the foundations of her extraordinary future were quietly being laid, in moments that might have seemed ordinary to those around her. Angeza's childhood was not without its challenges. She grew up during a period of political unrest and social transformation, in a region marked by cultural diversity and ethnic tension. The early 20th century was a time of uncertainty in the Balkans, with wars and shifting borders shaping the lives of families and communities. Yet even amid such turbulence, Angeza's family home was a sanctuary of love, stability, and spiritual guidance. Her parents' example of ethical living, integrity, and devotion to faith provided a moral compass that would guide her through the uncertainties and hardships of her life. From a young age she witnessed the ways in which kindness, patience, and moral courage could transform lives, even in the smallest of gestures. The seeds of spiritual sensitivity appeared early. As a child, Angeze was naturally drawn to prayer, reflection, and acts of kindness. She displayed a remarkable awareness of the needs and emotions of those around her, offering comfort, assistance, and companionship with a level of empathy that seemed beyond her years. Friends, neighbors, and family members would later recount her early acts of generosity, sharing food, offering a helping hand, or quietly comforting someone in distress. These were not isolated moments of childlike curiosity. They were the earliest expressions of a lifelong calling to serve the most vulnerable. From the beginning, her heart was attuned to the suffering of others, a sensitivity that would become the defining feature of her mission in life. Education played a significant role in shaping Angeza's early character. She attended a local Catholic school, where she was immersed in both intellectual and spiritual formation. Beyond the lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic, she absorbed teachings about morality, compassion, and service. Her teachers recognized her intelligence, diligence, and eagerness to learn, but it was her devotion to spiritual principles that set her apart. While her peers might have been motivated by grades or recognition, Angeza's motivation was rooted in a desire to honor God, do good for others, and live a life of integrity. These early experiences in education cultivated discipline, responsibility, and an understanding that knowledge is not merely for personal advancement, but for service to a higher purpose. Family life further reinforced these values. Nicola and Dranophile nurtured a sense of community, compassion, and social responsibility in their children. Stories of their charitable acts, visiting the sick, aiding neighbors in need, and offering support to the marginalized, were lessons more powerful than any classroom instruction. Young Angese absorbed these lessons not as abstract ideals, but as practical ways of being in the world. In her early years, she learned that true wealth is measured not in material possessions but in love, service, and integrity. This understanding would become a central pillar of her life's mission, guiding her choices, shaping her priorities, and defining her path in ways that would touch millions of lives. The Boyadjiu household also emphasized the importance of humility and moral grounding. Even in moments of success or recognition, children were taught to remain humble, to act with integrity, and to value the dignity of every person. These lessons took root in Angesa's character, shaping her worldview in a manner that combined practical wisdom with spiritual insight. From her earliest days, she understood that life was a series of responsibilities to others, a continuum of moral choices, and an opportunity to make a difference through small but meaningful acts of service. The combination of these formative experiences, family, faith, and education, created the foundation upon which a life of extraordinary purpose would be built. Angesa's early encounters with suffering and injustice further deepened her spiritual awareness. She observed poverty in her own community, the struggles of families burdened by economic hardship, and the vulnerability of children and the elderly. While some might have turned away in indifference, she felt an innate compulsion to respond, to alleviate pain, and to act with compassion. These formative experiences were not easy. They presented the harsh realities of a world filled with suffering and inequality. Yet they also ignited a fire within her, a sense of mission and responsibility that would define her life. She realized that true service requires not comfort or convenience, but courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to engage with the world's most difficult challenges. Faith, of course, was the anchor throughout her early life. Prayer was not a routine obligation, but a source of strength, reflection, and guidance. Through prayer, young Angese developed an understanding of purpose and alignment with a higher calling. She learned to listen, to discern, and to trust that life's challenges could be navigated with patience, humility, and devotion. Her early spiritual practices were modest, yet they instilled discipline and an awareness that faith is both personal and actionable. It shapes character, informs decisions, and cultivates resilience, lessons that would carry her through decades of hardship, service, and global recognition. Another remarkable aspect of her early life was the development of empathy and emotional intelligence. Angese displayed an unusual capacity to perceive the emotions of others, to respond to unspoken needs, and to act in ways that uplifted those around her. This sensitivity was not simply a natural gift, it was nurtured through her environment, her upbringing, and her intentional engagement with the world. She began to understand that leadership, influence, and spiritual impact arise not from authority or position, but from the ability to connect, understand, and respond to the human experience with compassion and integrity. This early cultivation of empathy would later define the essence of her ministry and her global legacy. Cultural and social influences also played a role in shaping Angesa's early formation. Growing up in a diverse region, she was exposed to multiple languages, religions, and cultural traditions. This early exposure fostered an appreciation for human diversity and the understanding that all people, regardless of background, possess inherent dignity. It nurtured tolerance, patience, and a universal perspective, qualities that would become crucial when she dedicated her life to serving the world's most marginalized populations. From these early experiences, she learned that service is not selective, it is universal. True compassion recognizes no boundaries of ethnicity, nationality, or social status. Even as a child, Angese exhibited the discipline that would later define her religious and humanitarian work. She approached her studies, chores, and responsibilities with diligence, perseverance, and a quiet determination. Her actions were deliberate, guided by an internal moral compass that valued integrity over convenience and responsibility over self-interest. Discipline, she learned early, was not an external imposition but a choice, a way of living that aligns with higher principles and sustains purpose over a lifetime. These lessons in discipline would provide the foundation for her extraordinary commitment to service in the years to come. Perhaps most importantly, Angese's early life in Skopje taught her that greatness is not measured by public recognition or material success, but by the consistency, intentionality, and love with which one lives each day. Her life illustrates that small acts, when guided by faith, compassion, and moral clarity, accumulate into extraordinary impact. From sharing food with a neighbor to comforting a grieving friend, each gesture in her early years was a practice of the values that would define her later work. These lessons resonate for every reader. Purpose, service, and compassion begin at home, in ordinary circumstances, and grow through repeated intentional practice. By the time she reached adolescence, Angese had already developed a profound sense of vocation. The world's injustices were visible to her, and she felt an undeniable calling to dedicate her life to addressing them. She had learned the foundational principles that would guide her every step: humility, discipline, empathy, resilience, and unwavering faith. These were not abstract ideals but practical tools for living, shaping her identity, and enabling her to navigate a world filled with challenges, uncertainty, and human suffering. In reflecting on her early life in Skopje, it becomes clear that Mother Teresa's extraordinary future was built upon ordinary, yet profoundly formative experiences. Her family, her community, her education, and her early exposure to suffering cultivated a heart capable of both empathy and action. They instilled discipline, moral clarity, and spiritual sensitivity. Most importantly, they awakened in her the conviction that a life devoted to service, however demanding, however unseen, was the highest calling a human being could embrace. Her story is a reminder to all of us that greatness does not begin with wealth, privilege, or extraordinary circumstances. It begins with intention, love, and the courage to respond to the needs of those around us. Mother Teresa's early life in Skopje offers a blueprint for cultivating resilience, compassion, and purpose. Observe the world with empathy, act with courage, nurture your faith, and dedicate yourself to service. These formative years set the stage for a life that would touch millions, demonstrating that the heart of service is cultivated from childhood, sustained by discipline, and expressed through relentless love for humanity. Angese Boyajiu's story teaches us that every life has the potential to make a difference. The lessons of her early years are universal. Humility, compassion, discipline, and moral grounding are within reach for all who choose to nurture them. The foundation she built in Skopje was not merely preparation for a religious life, it was preparation for a life that would inspire the world. Her journey reminds us that service begins in the heart, is practiced in daily life, and can ultimately transform entire communities and generations. Chapter 2: The Call to Religious Life. Life often speaks to us in whispers, before it demands our attention in undeniable clarity. For Angese Boyajiu, the quiet stirrings of vocation began in her earliest encounters with faith, service, and the suffering of others, but it would soon become a call that would shape her entire existence. By her late teens, Angese had begun to sense that her life was meant for something far greater than personal comfort or ordinary ambition. There was a voice, gentle yet insistent, that guided her toward a path of devotion, sacrifice, and service, a life wholly committed to God and humanity. That path would lead her to the Sisters of Loreto, and ultimately across continents to India, a journey that demanded courage, resilience, and a radical embrace of the unknown. The decision to join the Sisters of Loreto was not made lightly. In Skopje, her family had nurtured her spiritual formation and moral grounding, but the world beyond her home was full of both opportunity and uncertainty. As she contemplated her calling, Angese reflected on what it meant to devote herself entirely to God. The prospect of leaving her family, her familiar surroundings, and the comfort of home was daunting. Yet within her heart, the desire to serve the most vulnerable and dedicate her life to the divine was overwhelming. She understood that true vocation is not a matter of convenience or self-interest. It is a response to a higher purpose, an alignment with a calling that transcends personal desire and worldly comfort. In 1928, at the age of 18, Angese made the courageous choice to leave Skopje and join the Sisters of Loreto in Ireland, the first step toward a life she had long felt destined for. The journey itself was transformative, requiring not only physical relocation, but also a deep psychological and spiritual transition. She left behind everything familiar, stepping into a world of new customs, a new language, and a rigorous schedule of prayer, study, and service. The courage required to take this step cannot be overstated. She was a young woman venturing alone into foreign lands, driven only by faith and a sense of purpose that few could fully understand. Her willingness to embrace uncertainty and discomfort would become a hallmark of her life, a principle she would rely on again and again in the decades to come. The early months with the Sisters of Loreto were both inspiring and challenging. Angese encountered a strict regimen of spiritual and academic formation, including theology, philosophy, and practical skills for missionary work. The sisters demanded discipline, focus, and humility, yet they also nurtured the individual gifts and spiritual inclinations of each novice. For Angese, this period was both an initiation into religious life and a test of her determination. She was required to adapt quickly to the structured life of the convent, mastering new routines, customs, and expectations. These experiences reinforced the importance of perseverance, self-discipline, and the willingness to submit to a purpose greater than oneself. Every task, from meditation to study to service, became a lesson in resilience and preparation for the extraordinary mission that awaited her. After her initial formation in Ireland, Angese was sent to India, where she would begin her lifelong mission. Arriving in Calcutta in 1929, she encountered a city of stark contrasts: beauty and decay, wealth and extreme poverty, hope and suffering. The realities of India were vastly different from the life she had known in Skopje and Ireland. She was immediately faced with the challenge of adapting to a new language, culture, and social environment, all while maintaining her spiritual focus and commitment to service. The city's intensity, the crowded streets, and the overwhelming presence of human suffering could have discouraged even the most dedicated soul, yet Angese embraced each day as an opportunity to serve, to learn, and to grow. Her early years in India were marked by both spiritual illumination and practical challenges. Learning the local languages was essential for connecting with those she was sent to serve, and mastering the cultural nuances required patience and observation. Each day she immersed herself in the lives of the poor, learning not only about their material hardships, but also about the dignity, resilience, and humanity that persisted even in the harshest conditions. She began to see that the path of service was not just about alleviating physical suffering, but about recognizing the inherent worth of every human being and acting with compassion, patience, and humility. The adjustment to missionary life also demanded emotional and spiritual resilience. Angese encountered isolation, homesickness, and the weight of responsibility at an early age. Being far from her family and familiar surroundings, she relied heavily on prayer and meditation, developing an inner strength that would sustain her through decades of service. These experiences taught her that faith is not abstract. It is a practical tool for navigating uncertainty, confronting fear, and maintaining focus on a higher calling. She discovered that resilience is built not in moments of comfort, but in the willingness to endure discomfort, persevere through hardship, and remain steadfast in purpose. In the convent, and throughout her early missionary experiences, Angese's dedication to service became increasingly visible to those around her. She demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for empathy, attentiveness, and practical action. Whether assisting students at the Loreto School, tending to the sick, or engaging with the local community, she exhibited a consistent commitment to loving action, grounded in both spiritual devotion and practical care. These formative experiences reinforce the principle that faith without action is incomplete. True vocation requires both contemplation and implementation, prayer and practice, vision and execution. The decision to embrace religious life also sharpened Angese's understanding of sacrifice. She quickly learned that serving others at the highest level requires personal cost, discipline, and a willingness to forego comfort. Each day presented opportunities to practice humility, patience, and selflessness, reinforcing her commitment to a life not of personal gain but of radical service. She understood that the path she had chosen was not easy, but she also recognized that the challenges themselves were opportunities for spiritual growth, resilience, and the deepening of her moral and ethical character. Beyond the practical and spiritual formation, Angese's early vocational journey was also a lesson in vision and foresight. She began to perceive that her life's work would not be confined to conventional boundaries or predictable structures. Her mission would require courage to innovate, flexibility to adapt, and faith to trust in a path that was not yet fully revealed. These early experiences, filled with challenges, adaptation, and learning, prepared her for the moment when she would break from the established order of the convent, to address the needs of the dying, the destitute, and the marginalized in ways the Church had not yet envisioned. She began to see that true leadership in service is not about seeking recognition, but about anticipating needs and responding with unwavering commitment and creativity. The development of her spiritual discipline during this period cannot be overstated. Daily routines of prayer, meditation, reflection, and study created a framework within which she could maintain focus, endure hardship, and cultivate compassion. These practices became not only personal anchors, but essential tools for her lifelong mission. They allowed her to navigate the complexities of cross-cultural ministry, the emotional intensity of service, and the inevitable challenges of leadership. They also provided a model for others, demonstrating that faith, discipline, and resilience are cultivated through consistent practice, not merely innate talent or inspiration. Angese's early vocational journey also illustrates the importance of courage. Leaving home, traveling to foreign lands, embracing unfamiliar cultures, and committing to a life of service required extraordinary bravery. Courage, she learned, is not the absence of fear but the choice to act in alignment with purpose despite fear, uncertainty, and discomfort. It is a principle that she would carry forward throughout her life, whether facing the destitute in Calcutta, navigating bureaucratic challenges, or confronting global crises. Her courage was rooted in faith, discipline, and a vision of service that transcended personal limitation. By the end of her early years with the Sisters of Loreto, and her initial missionary experiences, Angese had laid the foundation for a life that would inspire millions. She had cultivated resilience, moral clarity, empathy, and spiritual depth. She had learned to navigate discomfort, embrace sacrifice, and act decisively in service of others. Most importantly, she had begun to embody the essence of vocation, a life wholly dedicated to God, guided by love, and committed to serving humanity with humility, courage, and unwavering faith. These formative experiences are lessons for us all. Mother Teresa's journey from Skopje to Ireland to India demonstrates that true calling requires courage, adaptability, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. It shows that service is born not only of compassion, but of discipline, resilience, and spiritual grounding. Most importantly, it reminds us that when we answer the call to dedicate ourselves to a higher purpose, we are capable of extraordinary impact, both in the lives of others and in our own growth as compassionate, courageous, and morally grounded human beings. The call to religious life, therefore, was not simply a personal choice for Unyielding. It was the beginning of a lifelong journey that would transform her from a devoted young woman into Mother Teresa, a global symbol of faith, service, and love. Her early vocational discernment teaches us that the first step toward a meaningful life is courage, the courage to listen, to respond, and to act in alignment with the deepest callings of our hearts. From these early years, the principles of faith, resilience, and service were etched into her character, preparing her to become a beacon of hope and compassion for the world. Chapter 3: Life in Calcutta and Initial Challenges. When Unyielding, now Sister Teresa of Loreto, first stepped onto the streets of Calcutta, she entered a world both vibrant and broken, filled with life and yet marred by suffering beyond what she had ever known. It was a city of contrasts: grand colonial buildings and slums of unimaginable poverty, bustling markets and crowded alleys where sickness and despair were omnipresent. For a young nun from Europe, the sights, sounds, and smells of Calcutta were overwhelming. Yet beneath the initial shock, a quiet stirring of purpose took hold in her heart. This was the place where her calling would transform from abstract vocation to a mission of tangible service, a calling that demanded courage, empathy, and relentless perseverance. Sister Teresa began her work at St. Mary's School, teaching girls from middle-class families who, like her, were learning both academics and faith. The school was orderly, well-kept, and safe, a sharp contrast to the sprawling slums beyond its gates. For many young women, this environment provided security and predictability, but for Sister Teresa, it soon became clear that her mission would need to extend far beyond classroom instruction. The structured life of teaching offered stability, yet it also highlighted the disparity between the sheltered lives of her students and the brutal reality of the city that lay just beyond the walls of the convent. The awareness of that gap awakened in her a profound sense of responsibility, a sense that she could not simply educate in a safe, insulated environment while suffering continued unchecked in the streets around her. The first time Sister Teresa ventured outside the convent and the classroom, to witness the city's destitution firsthand, the reality struck her deeply. She saw children scavenging for scraps of food, families living among filth and disease, and the elderly abandoned with no one to care for them. The suffering was physical, yes, but it was also spiritual. Human dignity denied, hope dimmed, and voices of despair often silenced by poverty. In those early moments, she experienced what would become a lifelong awareness: that true service requires one to face discomfort directly, to step into the brokenness of the world, and to act with courage and compassion even when the circumstances are overwhelming. For Sister Teresa, it was not enough to teach; she felt called to respond fully to the human need before her eyes. These early experiences in Calcutta revealed the depth of suffering she had not yet encountered in her previous life. The poverty was not temporary or circumstantial; it was systemic, entrenched, and often invisible to those who did not look closely. Disease was rampant, sanitation inadequate, and hunger an everyday reality for the vast majority of the city's poorest residents. Witnessing these conditions awakened in her a sense of moral urgency. She understood that responding to suffering requires more than sympathy. It demands action, sustained commitment, and the willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for the sake of others. Each encounter with a starving child, an abandoned elder, or a sick family member strengthened her resolve and clarified her mission to dedicate her life to serving the poorest of the poor. Adapting to life in Calcutta presented its own practical challenges. The climate was harsh, with intense heat, humidity, and monsoon rains, all of which contrasted sharply with the European environment she had known. Learning local languages, understanding cultural customs, and navigating the complex social dynamics of the city required humility, patience, and perseverance. At times she felt isolated, overwhelmed by the scale of human need and unsure of where to begin. Yet it was precisely in these moments of uncertainty that her faith deepened, guiding her toward the realization that true vocation is not always comfortable, and that resilience is forged in the willingness to endure discomfort in pursuit of a higher calling. One of the most transformative aspects of her early life in Calcutta was her direct exposure to human suffering on an intimate, personal level. Unlike the abstract understanding of poverty she had learned from books or conversations, she now confronted it face to face. She washed the wounds of the sick, offered blankets to the shivering, and spoke words of comfort to those dying alone in alleyways. Each interaction tested her empathy, patience, and courage. It demanded that she confront the full spectrum of human suffering and respond not with detachment, but with compassion and actionable love. These experiences would shape her philosophy of service, that every human being, regardless of status or circumstance, deserves dignity, care, and love. Early challenges were not only external, but internal as well. Sister Teresa wrestled with fear, doubt, and the enormity of the task before her. She understood that to serve effectively, she would need to cultivate emotional and spiritual resilience. She relied heavily on prayer, reflection, and guidance from her mentors in the convent to maintain focus and clarity. Through this inner work she discovered a crucial truth: courage is not the absence of fear but the choice to act despite fear. Faith is not a passive state, but a source of strength that enables perseverance when circumstances are daunting. Each day in Calcutta became a classroom for cultivating these qualities, teaching lessons that no formal education could impart. Her early work in the city also highlighted the importance of practical humility. She could not solve every problem, cure every illness, or feed every hungry child. The enormity of human suffering was humbling, and at times overwhelming. Yet, rather than retreating into despair, she learned to focus on what she could do, trusting that consistent small acts of service could accumulate into meaningful change. This perspective became a cornerstone of her approach: serve faithfully and diligently in each moment, recognizing that impact grows over time and that even the simplest acts, when motivated by love and commitment, have profound significance. Through these experiences, Sister Teresa also cultivated an extraordinary level of empathy and emotional intelligence. She learned to listen deeply, to perceive needs that were not spoken, and to respond with sensitivity and care. This ability to connect with people on a human level, to honor their dignity, even in the most desperate circumstances, would define her ministry for decades. Empathy, she discovered, is not passive. It requires action, courage, and the willingness to place oneself in solidarity with those who suffer. It is a discipline, a moral practice, and a source of profound spiritual growth. The initial years in Calcutta were marked by incremental progress and small victories, but they were also punctuated by profound lessons in perseverance. She encountered bureaucratic obstacles, resistance from some local authorities, and occasional misunderstandings with the communities she sought to serve. Each setback was a test of character, an opportunity to refine patience, and a moment to recommit to her higher calling. These early challenges reinforced the principle that meaningful service is never easy, and that the path of vocation often involves navigating resistance, enduring hardship, and maintaining faith in the face of adversity. It was during these formative years that the vision of serving the poorest of the poor crystallized. Sister Teresa realized that her mission could not be limited to classrooms or convent walls. It needed to extend into the streets, slums, and homes where suffering was most acute. She understood that true service requires a willingness to engage directly with pain, to sacrifice comfort, and to act without expectation of recognition or reward. Her early exposure to the harsh realities of life in Calcutta shaped a philosophy of action that emphasized courage, empathy, humility, and sustained commitment. It was a philosophy that would guide her work for the rest of her life and inspire millions around the world. Another critical lesson she absorbed in these early years was the importance of preparation and discipline. To serve effectively, she needed not only compassion but also organization, planning, and consistent effort. She learned to balance prayer, reflection, and spiritual practice with practical action, understanding that service without discipline can falter. By combining inner spiritual strength with disciplined external action, she began to develop the model of mission work that would define her career, one that was deeply grounded in faith, yet highly practical in execution, a balance that allowed her to address immense challenges with clarity, focus, and impact. The early years in Calcutta also cultivated her moral courage. Witnessing extreme suffering on a daily basis, she could not remain silent or passive. She learned that living a life of faith demands speaking truth to injustice, acting decisively in the face of need, and prioritizing ethical action above personal comfort. Moral courage, she discovered, is rooted in conviction, reinforced through practice, and sustained by faith. It is the willingness to confront hardship and uncertainty with integrity, knowing that the measure of a life is not in comfort or ease, but in service rendered with love, humility, and courage. By the end of these initial years, Sister Teresa had undergone a profound transformation. The sheltered young nun who had arrived in Calcutta had matured into a woman of extraordinary empathy, unwavering faith, and resolute purpose. She had learned to navigate the harsh realities of poverty, disease, and human suffering, while maintaining inner peace, discipline, and spiritual focus. She had embraced a philosophy of service that combined practical action with spiritual devotion, courage with humility, and empathy with moral clarity. These early experiences in Calcutta laid the foundation for the life's work that would make her a global symbol of compassion, resilience, and selfless service. For readers reflecting on her journey, these years offer powerful lessons. True vocation emerges not in comfort but in challenge, not in convenience but in sacrifice. Service is not a casual act, but a lifestyle of empathy, courage, and disciplined action. The path of purpose requires faith, patience, and resilience, yet it also provides profound fulfillment, moral clarity, and the opportunity to touch lives in ways that transcend recognition or reward. Sister Teresa's life in these early years demonstrates that greatness is built in small, deliberate acts of love, and that the courage to confront suffering transforms both the giver and the receiver. Calcutta, with its relentless poverty and human need, became the crucible in which Sister Teresa's mission was forged. Here, she discovered the transformative power of empathy, the necessity of resilience, and the importance of faith-driven action. She learned that service is most meaningful when it is sacrificial, consistent, and rooted in moral conviction. These lessons, learned amid the bustling streets, crowded slums, and moments of intimate human suffering, became the blueprint for the extraordinary life that would follow. In conclusion, Sister Teresa's early life in Calcutta was a period of awakening, challenge, and profound growth. The exposure to extreme poverty, disease, and human suffering shaped her mission, cultivated her resilience, and refined her moral and spiritual character. She learned that courage is required to serve, empathy is cultivated through engagement, and faith is the foundation for perseverance in the face of adversity. These early experiences set the stage for her global mission, demonstrating that the journey to extraordinary impact begins with a willingness to embrace discomfort, serve relentlessly, and act with unwavering purpose. The streets of Calcutta were her first classroom in human suffering, her first training ground in radical compassion, and the setting in which the heart of service began to beat in full force. Chapter 4: Founding the Missionaries of Charity. Every great mission begins with a vision, a spark of insight that refuses to be ignored. For Mother Teresa, the vision came as a quiet, yet unmistakable call to serve the poorest of the poor, not just occasionally or from a distance, but fully and unreservedly, with one's life dedicated to love in action. Her years of teaching and witnessing suffering in Calcutta had revealed a truth that would shape the rest of her life. Alleviating human suffering requires more than goodwill. It requires organization, commitment, and a sustainable structure through which compassion can reach the most marginalized, abandoned, and forgotten members of society. This realization was the genesis of the Missionaries of Charity, an order that would eventually transform the world of humanitarian work and exemplify the power of faith-driven leadership. The inspiration to found her own order did not emerge suddenly. It was the result of years of reflection, prayer, and immersion in the harsh realities of life on the streets of Calcutta. Mother Teresa had been struck repeatedly by the suffering she encountered daily: children dying of hunger, the sick abandoned on sidewalks, families torn apart by poverty and disease. While her work with the Loreto sisters allowed her to teach and provide care within certain boundaries, it became increasingly clear that the conventional structures of service could not reach those most in need. She envisioned a life of radical service, one that would transcend existing limitations and bring dignity, care, and hope to people whom society had forgotten. In her reflections and prayers, she began to understand that God was calling her to create something new, a religious order dedicated entirely to serving the destitute with both humility and practical action. The path to founding the Missionaries of Charity was not simple. Mother Teresa faced both internal and external challenges. Internally, she wrestled with doubt and the enormity of the responsibility she was contemplating. Could one woman truly build an organization capable of addressing the suffering of Calcutta's poorest? Could she inspire others to commit their lives to such a radical path of service? These questions haunted her, but she found solace and direction in prayer. Through meditation and spiritual reflection, she discerned that the fear and uncertainty were natural signs of the magnitude of her calling. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear but the determination to move forward despite it. Faith was her anchor, providing the clarity and conviction to act when the task seemed impossible. Externally, Mother Teresa had to navigate the complexities of church authority. Proposing a new religious order required approval from the Vatican, a process that involved scrutiny, deliberation, and negotiation. Many questioned the feasibility of her mission, expressing concern over the radical nature of her vision to leave behind convent walls, live among the destitute, and dedicate one's life entirely to serving the abandoned and dying. Yet she persisted. She presented her vision with humility, clarity, and unwavering conviction. Her approach was not confrontational. It was guided by the principle that God's work requires patience, persistence, and faith in the divine timing of events. After months of prayer, meetings, and preparation, she received the blessing she needed. In 1950, the Missionaries of Charity were officially established, marking the birth of an organization that would become a beacon of hope worldwide. The early days of the Missionaries of Charity were defined by simplicity, courage, and relentless action. Mother Teresa and her small group of volunteers lived among those they served, sharing the conditions of poverty with dignity and empathy. They opened shelters for the homeless, clinics for the sick, and homes for those dying alone on the streets. Every task was executed with humility and attention to human dignity. Each act, feeding the hungry, bathing the infirm, comforting the dying, was both practical and symbolic, demonstrating that love in action is the highest form of service. These early initiatives were modest in scale but monumental in impact, illustrating the principle that transformative action begins with a commitment to the immediate needs before you, regardless of how overwhelming the larger picture may seem. Mother Teresa's leadership style during these formative years exemplified vision combined with relentless determination. She understood that leadership in service is not about authority or recognition, but about inspiring others through example, clarity of purpose, and unwavering commitment. She led not with commands but with presence, living the values she wished to instill in her sisters and volunteers. Her humility was not weakness, it was strength, a demonstration that the most powerful form of influence arises from integrity, authenticity, and consistency. Those who worked alongside her were motivated not by obligation, but by witnessing her dedication, her compassion, and her courage in confronting suffering directly. The organization's growth in the early years was fueled by this combination of practical action and spiritual guidance. Mother Teresa emphasized discipline, prayer, and preparation, alongside the daily acts of service. Sisters were trained to meet not only physical needs but emotional and spiritual ones as well, recognizing that true care addresses the whole person. She instilled a culture of humility, resilience, and unwavering commitment, ensuring that every member of the order understood that their work was both a vocation and a ministry. The emphasis on preparation, discipline, and spiritual focus enabled the missionaries of charity to respond effectively to challenges that were as varied as they were severe: epidemics, natural disasters, social resistance, and the immense scale of poverty in Calcutta. The early work of the missionaries of charity also demanded creative problem-solving. Resources were scarce and needs were overwhelming. Mother Teresa encouraged her sisters to innovate within the constraints they faced, finding practical solutions to feed, clothe, and shelter those in their care. She demonstrated that vision without action remains unrealized, and that compassion must be operationalized to be meaningful. Every meal prepared, every bed offered to the homeless, every child cared for was a tangible expression of a larger mission. Her insistence on practicality, combined with spiritual grounding, ensured that the order's impact was immediate, measurable, and replicable. In these early years, Mother Teresa also learned invaluable lessons about resilience. Facing the enormity of human suffering daily could have led to despair, but she transformed these challenges into opportunities for growth, reflection, and strengthened faith. She taught her sisters to embrace difficulty as a pathway to spiritual and personal development, emphasizing that endurance in service builds character, empathy, and moral courage. Each setback, whether a lack of resources, illness among the sisters, or societal resistance, became a lesson in patience, strategic thinking, and unwavering dedication. The missionaries of charity thrived not in spite of challenges, but because they were prepared to meet them with humility, faith, and determined action. Mother Teresa's vision extended beyond immediate relief. She recognized that serving the poorest of the poor required both short-term action and long-term sustainability. Shelters needed to be maintained, clinics organized, and communities engaged. Education, advocacy, and spiritual formation were integrated into the organization's work, ensuring that the missionaries of charity addressed not only physical suffering, but also the dignity, hope, and spiritual needs of those they served. This holistic approach became a defining feature of the order, and a model for effective humanitarian work worldwide. Her leadership also emphasized the transformative power of example. She demonstrated that the depth of one's commitment is communicated not merely through words, but through consistent action, visible humility, and the courage to confront suffering directly. She showed that leadership rooted in service is both moral and practical. It inspires others, mobilizes resources, and creates a culture in which compassion becomes a habit, not an occasional act. By living alongside the people she served, sharing their hardships and treating every individual with dignity, Mother Teresa taught a profound lesson. True leadership is inseparable from empathy, integrity, and selflessness. Perhaps the most important lesson from the founding of the Missionaries of Charity is that vision must be paired with action. Mother Teresa's ability to translate compassion into concrete initiatives, shelters, clinics, homes for the dying, illustrates a universal truth: a calling without execution remains unfulfilled. Her early work demonstrates that the courage to act decisively, even when resources are limited and challenges are immense, is the hallmark of transformative leadership. She modeled how one person, guided by faith, can create structures that amplify love, care, and service to a scale previously unimaginable. By the end of the first years of the Missionaries of Charity, the order had established a reputation for unwavering commitment, radical humility, and direct service to the most marginalized populations. Their work gained recognition locally and eventually internationally, drawing attention not for personal accolades, but for the profound impact on those most in need. Mother Teresa's vision, determination, and ability to inspire others had created an enduring institution that would carry her mission forward long after the first small team of sisters had begun their work. For those reflecting on her journey, the founding of the Missionaries of Charity offers timeless lessons. Vision requires clarity, faith, and courage. Leadership is most effective when demonstrated through example, integrity, and service. Compassion becomes transformative when paired with concrete action and disciplined execution. Challenges are not barriers but opportunities to grow, refine strategy, and deepen commitment. Most importantly, every act of service, no matter how small, contributes to a life of extraordinary purpose when motivated by love, humility, and dedication to a higher calling. The establishment of the Missionaries of Charity represents the culmination of years of preparation, reflection, and spiritual discernment. It embodies the principle that ordinary people, when guided by extraordinary purpose, can create lasting impact. Mother Teresa's courage to follow her vision, to navigate institutional hurdles, to inspire others, and to act decisively in the face of overwhelming human need is a blueprint for anyone seeking to live a life of meaning, purpose, and service. In conclusion, the founding of the Missionaries of Charity marks a defining moment in the life of Mother Teresa and in the history of humanitarian work. It illustrates that faith, vision, and determination are not abstract ideals but practical forces that, when combined with courage, discipline, and empathy, can transform lives and communities. From the streets of Calcutta to the global stage, the order she created has become a living testament to the power of purpose-driven action. For anyone seeking to make a difference, the lesson is clear: see the need, cultivate the courage, act with compassion, and persist with faith. In doing so, one becomes part of a legacy that transcends time, culture, and circumstance, a legacy born from the heart of service, guided by vision, and executed with unwavering love. Chapter 5: A Life of Compassion in Action. Mother Teresa's life in Calcutta was not defined by grand gestures or fleeting moments of charity. It was defined by the steady, relentless rhythm of service, day after day, hour after hour, encounter after encounter. Her life became a symphony of compassion in action, where every choice, Every movement and every word was guided by the unwavering commitment to love and serve the most vulnerable. For her, service was not occasional, it was total, absolute and sacrificial. The streets of Calcutta, once overwhelming in their despair, became her classroom, her sanctuary, and her laboratory for demonstrating the transformative power of a heart fully devoted to others. Her daily routine reflected the extraordinary discipline and spiritual devotion that sustained her work. Each morning began before dawn, with prayer, meditation, and reflection. These moments were not ceremonial, they were essential. Prayer grounded her, infused her with courage, and renewed her vision. They provided the spiritual fuel necessary to face the day's immense challenges, feeding the hungry, bathing the sick, comforting the dying, and tending to those whom society had abandoned. Every act of service flowed from this inner well of faith and focus, demonstrating that sustained compassion requires both spiritual and practical preparation. Prayer, reflection, and meditation became the invisible scaffolding supporting a life of ceaseless action, reminding her and those around her that service without spiritual grounding could easily falter. From the moment she stepped into the streets, Mother Teresa embodied the principle that no act of love is too small. She would wash the sores of a beggar with the same care she offered a terminally ill patient, speak words of encouragement to a terrified child, and cradle the dying in her arms as though each soul were priceless and sacred. Her empathy was immediate, intuitive, and profound, yet it was also disciplined. She had learned early that true compassion requires not only feeling but action, an empathy that moves, heals, and restores dignity. In her presence, the marginalized were no longer invisible. The forgotten became seen. The rejected became embraced. The hopeless were infused with a flicker of dignity and light. The work was physically exhausting and emotionally demanding, yet Mother Teresa faced it with patience and perseverance. She understood that service is rarely glamorous, and that meaningful impact often arises in repetitive, uncelebrated acts performed consistently over time. She would feed hundreds of hungry children, attend to dozens of the sick, and offer words of comfort to the dying, each act grounded in a deep respect for human dignity. This daily labor was her ministry, her devotion, and her way of living out faith in tangible, concrete action. It was also a lesson to the world that greatness is measured not in titles or accolades but in the quiet, persistent love that transforms lives. One of the most remarkable aspects of her ministry was her ability to cultivate humility amidst immense responsibility. Mother Teresa never sought recognition, prestige, or fame. She rarely spoke of herself, focusing instead on the needs of those she served. Her humility was not passive. It was active, manifesting in the willingness to serve in the lowest, most intimate ways, washing the body of a dying stranger, sharing a meager meal, offering a blanket to a shivering soul. These acts, though small in isolation, multiplied exponentially through their impact. They taught that humility is not weakness but strength, a force capable of inspiring others to join in service and amplifying the reach of compassion. The impact of Mother Teresa's daily actions extended far beyond the individuals she directly served. Every act of kindness, every gesture of care became a model for others. Volunteers, students, and citizens of Calcutta witnessed her devotion and were inspired to act themselves. Her life demonstrated that influence grows not from authority, but from consistent, compassionate action. By embodying her values through routine, deliberate service, she created a culture of empathy that transcended boundaries, touching families, communities, and eventually the global consciousness. The principle was simple yet profound. When one person commits to love in action, others are encouraged to follow, creating a ripple effect of service and humanity. Mother Teresa's compassion was not abstract, it was intensely practical. She recognized that human suffering manifests in tangible needs: food, water, shelter, medical care, and companionship. Her work addressed each of these systematically. She established kitchens to feed the hungry, clinics to treat the sick, and shelters for the destitute. She organized volunteers to reach the abandoned and dying, ensuring that no one would be left without care. Each project was grounded in meticulous planning, discipline, and a relentless commitment to human dignity. Yet even as she organized these systems, she never lost sight of the individual. Every person was treated as unique, worthy of attention and love. This dual focus, systemic and personal, was a hallmark of her leadership and service. Her extraordinary dedication also demanded immense resilience. The suffering she encountered was relentless. Children dying of malnutrition, families broken by disease, the elderly left alone to face death. Witnessing such despair could easily have led to despair, cynicism, or burnout. Yet Mother Teresa cultivated an inner strength that allowed her to maintain compassion without being consumed by grief. She achieved this through a combination of prayer, reflection, and focus on the mission at hand. Each encounter with suffering became not a source of despair, but an opportunity to practice patience, empathy, and steadfast love. She demonstrated that resilience in service is cultivated through discipline, faith, and unwavering focus on the value of human life. In her daily interactions, Mother Teresa exemplified the transformative power of presence. She did not merely provide material assistance, she offered her attention, her listening ear, and her respect. A dying person held her hand and felt dignity restored. A starving child received nourishment and felt loved. A rejected woman found affirmation and a sense of worth. Her presence communicated that every life is sacred, and that no one is beyond the reach of compassion. In these simple yet profound gestures, Mother Teresa taught that love expressed through presence can heal wounds that resources alone cannot. Patience was another virtue that defined her work. The challenges of service are often slow, repetitive, and seemingly endless. Change does not come overnight, and suffering cannot always be alleviated in a single day. Mother Teresa demonstrated that patience is not passive waiting but active persistence, the sustained willingness to act day after day, even when results are not immediately visible. This patience, coupled with faith and humility, allowed her to maintain focus on long-term transformation while addressing immediate needs. It is a lesson that continues to inspire those seeking to make a meaningful impact in the world. Persistence in service multiplies effect over time. Equally remarkable was her ability to cultivate empathy in others. By modeling compassion consistently, she trained her volunteers, sisters, and community members to see beyond their own comfort and to respond to human need with sensitivity and understanding. She emphasized that empathy is not an emotion alone, it is an actionable skill that can be learned, practiced, and amplified. In nurturing this quality within her team, she ensured that the reach of her work would extend far beyond her personal capacity. Each act of compassion became a seed, growing into networks of service that transformed entire communities. Mother Teresa's life in these years also underscores the principle that small acts of kindness are often the most transformative. Feeding a single child, comforting one dying patient, or listening to a person's story may seem insignificant in isolation. Yet multiplied over days, weeks, and decades, these acts created a monumental impact. She taught the world that compassion is cumulative, that the steady, humble commitment to serve others builds a legacy far greater than grandiose gestures or occasional heroics. This principle is as relevant today as it was in her time. Consistent, humble service has the power to change lives, communities, and ultimately the world. Even in moments of intense suffering, Mother Teresa demonstrated extraordinary emotional intelligence. She could read unspoken needs, respond to distress with tact, and offer solace in ways that honored human dignity. Her emotional attunement was paired with practical solutions, creating a holistic approach to care. Every interaction was an opportunity to combine empathy with action, demonstrating that true compassion addresses both the heart and the body. Her example continues to remind us that love without practical application remains abstract, but applied love transforms reality. Her life also offers a profound lesson in moral courage. Serving the marginalized often required challenging societal indifference, confronting bureaucratic obstacles, and acting against prevailing social norms. Mother Teresa approached these challenges with quiet, steadfast courage. She did not seek confrontation for its own sake, but acted decisively to uphold the dignity and rights of those she served. Her courage was moral rather than combative, the courage to love relentlessly, to prioritize human need over personal convenience, and to act when many would have remained passive. This courage inspired countless others to confront injustice and to commit themselves to service. The influence of her daily actions extended far beyond Calcutta. Her work caught the attention of global leaders, journalists, and ordinary citizens alike. Yet she remained focused on the task at hand, never seeking fame but instead using recognition as a tool to amplify the mission. Her humility ensured that the spotlight never centered on her. It centered on the people she served and the values she embodied. She demonstrated that leadership in service is less about personal recognition and more about empowering others, creating systems of care, and inspiring action through example. Mother Teresa's life during this period also illustrates the interconnection between spiritual devotion and practical service. Prayer, reflection, and daily acts of compassion were inseparable in her routine. Each fueled the other. Spiritual grounding enabled her to act courageously, while service reinforced faith and humility. This integration became a defining characteristic of the missionaries of charity, and a model for anyone seeking to live a life of meaningful impact. Her approach demonstrates that enduring service requires a balance of inner strength and outward action, of contemplation and execution, of love felt deeply and expressed practically. In conclusion, the daily life of Mother Teresa during these years exemplifies the power of consistent, humble, and disciplined service. Through her routines of prayer, action, and reflection, she cultivated patience, empathy, and moral courage. Through her presence and attention, she restored dignity to the marginalized and inspired others to do the same. Small acts of kindness performed with consistency and love became a force for global transformation. Her life teaches that compassion is not an abstract ideal but a practical, actionable choice, one that, when pursued relentlessly, reshapes lives, communities, and even the world itself. Mother Teresa's example is timeless. It reminds us that greatness is measured not by power or wealth, but by the depth of our compassion, the courage of our convictions, and the persistence of our actions. By serving tirelessly, humbly, and faithfully, she transformed ordinary acts of love into extraordinary instruments of change. Her life in Calcutta, marked by unwavering dedication, resilience, and humility, stands as a blueprint for anyone seeking to live purposefully and to leave a legacy of kindness, service, and human dignity. The lesson is clear. Compassion is most powerful when it becomes action, patience becomes practice, and love becomes visible in the daily choices we make to serve others. Chapter 6: Global Recognition and Influence. Mother Teresa's life, once rooted solely in the streets of Calcutta, gradually became a beacon that drew attention from the farthest corners of the world. Her unwavering dedication to the poorest of the poor, and her tireless service transformed her from a local humanitarian into a global symbol of compassion, humility, and moral courage. But recognition, as powerful as it could be, brought its own challenges. The woman who thrived in the quiet humility of service now found herself under the scrutiny of global audiences, political leaders, and media. Yet even as accolades poured in, Mother Teresa remained grounded in her mission, to serve humanity selflessly, without distraction, ego, or compromise. The first decades of her work in Calcutta had already demonstrated the extraordinary potential of committed action. By creating the Missionaries of Charity, she had built a framework through which love could be operationalized: shelters for the homeless, clinics for the sick, and homes for the dying. These efforts gained recognition locally, inspiring volunteers and capturing the attention of Indian leaders and citizens alike. However, it was the tangible results of her compassion, the measurable impact on lives, the restoration of dignity to those society had abandoned, that began to capture international notice. The world saw not just the act of service, but its profound spiritual and social significance. As her reputation grew, Mother Teresa began receiving invitations to speak, to attend ceremonies, and to meet global leaders. At first, these invitations were foreign to her accustomed life of quiet, hands-on service. She was not accustomed to public recognition, yet she approached it with the same humility and purpose that had guided her work in Calcutta. For her, public attention was never about personal fame. It was a platform to highlight the plight of the poor, to bring the world's focus to human suffering, and to advocate for compassion, dignity, and justice. Every award, every speech, and every meeting with leaders became an opportunity to extend her mission beyond the borders of India, to inspire action on a global scale. The culmination of her global recognition came in 1979, when Mother Teresa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The honor was not merely a personal accolade, it was a validation of the values she had lived every day: humility, service, and love in action. Yet, true to her character, she used the platform not to glorify herself, but to draw attention to the voiceless and the invisible. In her acceptance speech, she spoke not of her own accomplishments, but of the millions of people she served: the sick, the dying, the abandoned, the forgotten. She reminded the world that peace is not only the absence of war, but the presence of love, the alleviation of suffering, and the recognition of human dignity. The Nobel Peace Prize became a global amplifier of her message, showing that service rooted in faith, courage, and humility could inspire change far beyond the immediate sphere of action. Balancing global recognition with private humility, however, was not without challenges. Mother Teresa was constantly reminded that public attention can be both a tool and a distraction. She understood that the mission was not to bask in applause, but to continue serving tirelessly. She adhered to a principle that defined her entire life: external recognition is meaningful only when it reinforces the ability to serve, not when it inflates the ego. Even as she traveled the world, met dignitaries, and received honors, her schedule remained dominated by prayer, reflection, and hands-on service. She remained in Calcutta frequently, ensuring that her work remained rooted in the very people she had committed herself to serve. Her influence extended far beyond ceremonial recognition. Mother Teresa engaged directly with world leaders, advocating for policies and actions that protected human dignity and addressed social injustice. She spoke with presidents, prime ministers, and royalty, reminding them that ethical leadership is inseparable from concern for the most vulnerable. She challenged political agendas that overlooked poverty, inequality, and suffering, insisting that moral responsibility cannot be optional in governance. Her courage in speaking truth to power, combined with her unwavering commitment to compassion, elevated her role from that of a humanitarian to a moral authority, one whose guidance carried weight in international affairs. Mother Teresa's global recognition also provided a platform for education and advocacy. Through interviews, speeches, and her writings, she taught that service is not a luxury for the exceptional, but a duty accessible to every individual. She emphasized that anyone, regardless of wealth, status, or education, could act to alleviate suffering and restore dignity. Her message was simple yet radical. True leadership is measured not by influence over others but by service to others. Compassion, humility, and moral courage are as powerful as political or economic power, and when coupled with action they can transform societies. Despite her worldwide fame, she maintained a life of remarkable discipline and personal devotion. Awards ceremonies, public appearances, and diplomatic engagements were balanced with private moments of prayer, reflection, and spiritual renewal. She modeled that recognition, when grounded in humility, does not corrupt but can amplify purpose. Every accolade became a responsibility, a reminder to continue acting, to maintain integrity, and to inspire others through example rather than rhetoric. Mother Teresa demonstrated that global influence is sustainable only when rooted in the same principles that guided everyday action: faith, humility, and relentless service. Her recognition was not confined to honors or awards. It was also expressed through the expansion of her order. As word of her work spread, volunteers and sisters joined the missionaries of charity from across the globe. The order grew beyond India, establishing missions in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. The sisters embraced her philosophy: live humbly, serve relentlessly, and value every individual as sacred. Each new center of service became an extension of her vision, showing that influence is not only measured in accolades, but in the multiplication of compassionate action through others. Mother Teresa's global reach became a living network of love, demonstrating that moral leadership has the power to mobilize humanity itself. Yet, with recognition came scrutiny. Not everyone understood or agreed with her methods or philosophy. Critics questioned the approach, the resources, and even the impact of her work. Mother Teresa faced these challenges with the same humility and faith that characterized her entire life. She did not respond with defensiveness or anger but with continued action. Her focus remained on the individuals in front of her: the hungry child, the sick patient, the dying soul. Criticism, she understood, was part of the journey, a test of resilience, and an opportunity to reaffirm commitment to core values. She showed the world that true moral leadership is measured not by popularity or approval, but by consistency in purpose and integrity under scrutiny. Her influence also reshaped the global understanding of service. Before her work, poverty alleviation was often considered a logistical or political challenge. Mother Teresa reframed it as a moral and spiritual imperative. She reminded humanity that addressing poverty requires empathy, dignity, and sustained action. Her recognition gave legitimacy to the idea that love, when operationalized, is a powerful force for social transformation. She became a teacher not only to her sisters and followers, but to the entire world, showing that ethical action rooted in compassion can challenge systemic neglect and inspire collective responsibility. One of the most powerful aspects of her global recognition was her ability to bridge cultural, religious, and political divides. Leaders from diverse backgrounds, different faiths, ideologies, and nationalities recognized her authority not because of political power but because of moral clarity. Her influence transcended divisions, emphasizing universal values: dignity, compassion, and service. She demonstrated that ethical leadership does not require uniform agreement, but relies on the shared recognition of fundamental human worth. Her life became a model for those seeking to lead with integrity, showing that influence is greatest when exercised with humility and a commitment to the common good. Even amidst her public engagements, Mother Teresa maintained the principle that service is inseparable from personal transformation. Recognition, she believed, should inspire introspection and growth, not complacency. Every award, every invitation, and every encounter with global leaders was treated as a reminder to deepen her humility, increase her diligence, and extend her reach further. She modeled that influence grounded in authenticity and purpose becomes a force for transformation, not only externally, but within the hearts and minds of those who witness it. Her global recognition ultimately amplified her ability to advocate for peace and human dignity. She consistently spoke against war, violence, and social injustice, emphasizing that true peace is built on compassion, service, and respect for life. She reminded the world that addressing human suffering is not a peripheral concern, but the central responsibility of every individual and society. Through her speeches, writings, and personal example, she illustrated that moral courage requires more than words. It demands action, perseverance, and unwavering commitment to ethical principles. Mother Teresa's life during this period also offers lessons in balancing influence with integrity. Many leaders, when recognized on a global scale, face the temptation to prioritize image, status, or personal ambition. She resisted these temptations entirely. Her life remained simple, disciplined, and focused on those in need. Her home, daily routines, and spiritual practices did not change despite accolades. She modeled that true leadership does not seek self-aggrandizement but empowers others, upholds values, and inspires action through authenticity and consistent service. Even as she became an international icon, Mother Teresa never lost sight of the essential principle: the individual matters. No number of awards or global recognitions could replace the importance of holding a dying hand, feeding a hungry child, or comforting a neglected soul. She demonstrated that global influence is magnified not by abstract ideas, but by tangible, compassionate actions. Each personal encounter became a lesson in dignity, empathy, and moral courage, showing that the impact of recognition is greatest when it serves a higher purpose rather than personal acclaim. Through her global recognition, Mother Teresa redefined the concept of ethical leadership. She showed that influence is not measured by authority, fame, or wealth, but by the ability to inspire, mobilize, and sustain compassionate action. Her life provided a template for leaders in every field: lead with humility, act decisively in service of others, maintain integrity under scrutiny, and let moral courage guide every decision. She transformed the world's understanding of leadership, demonstrating that power is most effective when exercised with love, empathy, and selfless dedication. In conclusion, the global recognition Mother Teresa received was both a testament to her extraordinary dedication and a tool to extend her mission further. Every award, every honor, and every public engagement became a platform to advocate for the voiceless, inspire collective action, and elevate the principles of compassion and dignity worldwide. Through her example, she demonstrated that recognition is meaningful only when it amplifies purpose, and influence is powerful only when exercised with integrity, humility, and relentless commitment to service. Mother Teresa's journey from the streets of Calcutta to the global stage exemplifies how a life of humble, consistent action can resonate across nations, cultures, and generations. She taught the world that service, grounded in faith and moral courage, can transform both the lives of the served and the hearts of those who witness it. Her life remains a blueprint for ethical leadership, showing that compassion expressed through action, humility maintained amidst recognition, and courage exercised under scrutiny can indeed change the world. Every accolade she received became a testament not to her personal fame, but to the power of selfless service, demonstrating that one life committed fully to love and dignity can illuminate the path for countless others. Chapter 7: Challenges, Criticism, and Resilience. The path of extraordinary service is rarely smooth, and Mother Teresa's life was no exception. While her devotion inspired millions, it also attracted scrutiny, skepticism, and criticism. Those who dared to serve at the edges of society, caring for the sick, the destitute, and the dying, often encounter resistance. The world rarely applauds selfless service immediately. It tests it, questions it, and sometimes seeks to diminish it. For Mother Teresa, these challenges were not deterrents but opportunities to deepen her faith, refine her mission, and demonstrate the resilience that defined her life. Her response to adversity provides a profound lesson. True greatness is forged not in comfort but in the crucible of trials. From the earliest days of the missionaries of charity, logistical challenges tested her leadership. Establishing shelters, clinics, and homes for the dying in a city as chaotic and impoverished as Calcutta was no small feat. Resources were scarce, donations were irregular, and volunteers often came and went, unprepared for the intensity of service demanded. Mother Teresa learned quickly that passion alone could not sustain a mission. Discipline, planning, and persistence were essential. She meticulously coordinated efforts, trained her sisters in practical skills, and inspired commitment through example. Even when confronted with obstacles that could have paralyzed others, she remained unwavering, demonstrating that resilience is cultivated through focus, prayer, and action. Criticism, both public and private, became a constant companion as her influence grew. Skeptics questioned her methods, her use of resources, and even her philosophy. Some argued that her care for the dying was inadequate, or that her approach to poverty was simplistic. Others doubted her intentions, suggesting that her global recognition was undeserved. For most people, such critiques could have led to despair, defensiveness, or withdrawal. For Mother Teresa, they were neither unexpected nor threatening. She faced criticism with humility, choosing to focus not on defending herself, but on continuing her work. Every challenge became a mirror, reflecting her commitment and revealing areas for growth, while never diminishing the dignity of her mission. Spiritual trials were perhaps the most profound challenges she endured. Despite her unwavering devotion, Mother Teresa experienced periods of deep doubt, loneliness, and inner questioning. Letters and reflections reveal moments when she felt distant from God, when the weight of suffering seemed unbearable, and when the silence of prayer felt like abandonment. Yet she did not succumb to despair. Instead, she integrated these spiritual struggles into her practice of service, understanding that endurance in faith is strengthened through confronting, not avoiding, difficulty. Her resilience was not a denial of struggle, it was the capacity to act in love and service, even when the heart felt heavy. Her physical health also became a battleground for resilience. The demands of her work, long hours, exposure to disease, and relentless travel, took a toll on her body. She endured exhaustion, illness, and the natural weariness that accompanies decades of intensive service. Yet even in these moments, she refused to see her limitations as reasons to stop. Instead, she approached her health challenges with acceptance, prayer, and strategic action. She recognized that resilience is not the absence of struggle, but the capacity to continue acting purposefully despite it. Her endurance teaches that the human body and spirit are capable of extraordinary perseverance when guided by faith, discipline, and conviction. One of the most remarkable aspects of her resilience was the way she balanced criticism, logistical difficulties, and health struggles with unwavering focus on the mission. For Mother Teresa, the measure of success was not public approval or personal comfort, but the degree to which she could alleviate suffering and restore dignity to the marginalized. This perspective allowed her to navigate setbacks with grace. She viewed obstacles as tests, opportunities to deepen her commitment, and reminders that the path of service is rarely linear. Every difficulty became a lesson in patience, strategy, and moral courage. Even in moments of intense skepticism, she maintained a consistent moral compass. Critics, whether individuals or institutions, often misunderstood the simplicity and radical nature of her approach. Yet she never wavered in her commitment to love, humility, and service. Her response was quiet yet powerful. She acted, she served, and she prayed. She demonstrated that resilience is not measured by the absence of opposition, but by the ability to remain aligned with one's values, purpose, and mission in the face of it. Mother Teresa's resilience extended to her emotional capacity as well. Caring for those who are dying, sick, or abandoned requires extraordinary emotional endurance. Witnessing intense suffering day after day can erode even the most determined spirit. She faced moments when sorrow threatened to overwhelm her, yet she learned to channel emotion into empathy, presence, and action. She cultivated the ability to mourn with those who suffered, while simultaneously offering hope, care, and dignity. This emotional balance was critical to her longevity and effectiveness, proving that resilience is as much about emotional management as it is about physical or spiritual endurance. Another crucial aspect of her resilience was her commitment to small daily acts of service. Mother Teresa understood that monumental change is rarely accomplished in a single grand gesture. It is the accumulation of countless small acts, washing, feeding, comforting, and listening, that produces transformative impact. By focusing on what could be done today, what could be done for one person at a time, she maintained forward momentum despite overwhelming challenges. Her example teaches that resilience is sustained through manageable, consistent action, rather than reliance on extraordinary feats. Every small act, repeated daily, compounds into extraordinary influence. Her capacity for perseverance was further strengthened by her deep spiritual discipline. Prayer, meditation, and reflection were not peripheral activities, they were the foundation of her endurance. These practices provided clarity, emotional balance, and renewal. Through prayer, she connected to a source greater than herself, gaining perspective on the suffering she witnessed and the tasks she undertook. Spiritual discipline reinforced the inner strength necessary to face external challenges and maintain unwavering dedication. Mother Teresa's life reminds us that resilience is nurtured by both action and reflection, by engagement with the world and connection to the sacred. Mother Teresa's leadership in the face of adversity also exemplifies the power of ethical steadfastness. She faced logistical inefficiencies, bureaucratic obstacles, and social resistance with honesty and integrity. She refused to compromise her values to expedite results or gain recognition. This unwavering commitment to ethical principles under pressure demonstrated that true resilience is not only about enduring hardship, but about maintaining moral clarity despite it. She showed the world that leadership rooted in compassion, honesty, and perseverance can thrive even under intense scrutiny and opposition. Her spiritual and practical resilience also inspired countless others to endure their own struggles. Volunteers, sisters, and supporters witnessed her capacity to persevere and were motivated to continue despite their own challenges. Her example demonstrated that one person's steadfastness can ripple outward, creating networks of resilience, courage, and hope. By modeling endurance, she provided a blueprint for others to confront obstacles with patience, faith, and determination. Her life teaches that resilience is contagious, and consistent commitment in the face of adversity can multiply through the actions of those inspired by example. Mother Teresa's life also illustrates that resilience is deeply intertwined with humility. She never allowed recognition or authority to dilute her focus or her sense of purpose. Instead, she remained grounded in her mission, prioritizing service over accolades, action over words, and compassion over convenience. This humility was the bedrock of her resilience. It prevented ego from consuming her energy, allowed her to remain flexible and responsive to needs, and kept her focus on the people she served rather than on personal advancement. In this way, humility is not passive but an active ingredient of enduring strength. Even when facing profound spiritual dryness, periods when prayer felt distant and faith felt tested, Mother Teresa maintained her commitment to service. These trials, often described as her dark nights of the soul, did not deter her. Instead, they became moments of introspection and refinement, deepening her empathy and reinforcing her determination. She demonstrated that resilience is not the absence of doubt or struggle, but the ability to act faithfully despite it. Her perseverance under spiritual trial provides one of the most compelling lessons of all, that unwavering dedication to purpose transcends temporary feelings, circumstances, or obstacles. Mother Teresa's approach to criticism also reflected her belief in the redemptive power of love and patience. She never engaged in harsh rebuttals, public arguments, or defensive displays. She accepted feedback, internalized lessons when appropriate, and continued her work without rancor. This approach reinforced her moral authority and magnified her influence. She demonstrated that resilience is not only enduring hardship, but responding to it with grace, compassion, and a steady commitment to one's principles. Her life shows that strength tempered by kindness is more powerful than strength expressed through anger or defiance. Her endurance in the face of systemic challenges, poverty, disease, and social neglect remains a model for anyone seeking to live a life of purpose. She refused to succumb to cynicism, overwhelm, or despair. Instead, she acted decisively, consistently, and lovingly. She believed that every individual mattered, that every life had intrinsic value, and that consistent action, no matter how small, could effect meaningful change. Her resilience was thus rooted in clarity of purpose. When the mission is clear and the heart is aligned with service, endurance becomes both possible and inevitable. In conclusion, Mother Teresa's life exemplifies the transformative power of resilience and faith in the face of challenge. She faced criticism, skepticism, and logistical obstacles with humility and integrity. She endured physical exhaustion, emotional strain, and spiritual trials with unwavering devotion. Through discipline, prayer, consistent action, and moral courage, she demonstrated that true resilience is multifaceted, encompassing physical, emotional, and spiritual endurance. Her life teaches that commitment to purpose, grounded in love and humility, can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Mother Teresa's journey reminds us that endurance is not passive survival, but active engagement with life's trials. By remaining focused on service, cultivating inner strength, and responding to criticism with grace, she created a legacy of moral and spiritual resilience. Every challenge she faced became an opportunity to grow stronger, act with greater compassion, and inspire others to do the same. Her life continues to teach that obstacles are not barriers, but invitations to deepen faith, extend love, and demonstrate the enduring power of commitment to service. Mother Teresa's example remains a guiding light for all who seek to live with purpose, courage, and unwavering dedication to humanity. Chapter 8: Spiritual Wisdom and Teachings. At the heart of Mother Teresa's extraordinary life of service was not merely action, but deep and abiding faith. While the world saw her tending to the sick, comforting the dying, and advocating for the forgotten, the true engine of her strength lay hidden within, a life of prayer, reflection, and unwavering reliance on God. Her outer works were visible, but her inner life was the foundation upon which everything stood. Without that interior discipline, her compassion would have faltered under the weight of suffering. Without that spiritual grounding, her resilience would have eroded under exhaustion and doubt. Mother Teresa's spiritual wisdom teaches us that meaningful action begins in stillness, and lasting strength is born in surrender. Her day always began in silence. Before the streets of Calcutta stirred with movement and noise, she and her sisters entered into prayer. In those early hours, she sought alignment with divine purpose, clarity of mind, and peace of heart. Prayer was not ritual alone, it was relationship. It was communion with the source of her courage and compassion. In the quiet, she renewed her resolve and entrusted the coming day to God. These moments of stillness were her anchor, reminding her that the mission did not depend solely on her effort, but on her willingness to be an instrument of love. Mother Teresa often spoke about doing small things with great love. This phrase was not sentimental, it was deeply theological and practical. She believed that every act of service, no matter how insignificant it appeared, carried eternal value when performed with sincerity and devotion. Washing a wound, feeding a hungry child, or offering a smile to someone abandoned were not trivial gestures. They were sacred acts, reflections of divine love expressed through human hands. Her spirituality was profoundly incarnational, rooted in the belief that God could be encountered in the suffering faces of the poor. Her approach to love was simple yet radical. Love, she taught, must be active. It cannot remain confined to words, intentions, or feelings. It must be demonstrated through service, sacrifice, and presence. She understood that love requires discipline and choice. It means showing up consistently, especially when the work is tiring or unglamorous. It means offering kindness even when unacknowledged. It means seeing the inherent dignity in every person, regardless of their condition. For Mother Teresa, love was not an abstract virtue but a daily commitment, renewed with each interaction. Humility was another cornerstone of her spiritual life. She never perceived herself as extraordinary, despite global recognition. She described herself simply as a pencil in God's hand, an instrument through which divine compassion could flow. This perspective liberated her from ego and self-importance. It allowed her to focus entirely on the mission, rather than on personal acclaim. Humility, in her understanding, was not self-deprecation but self-awareness. It was the recognition that strength comes from dependence on God, and that service is about elevating others, not oneself. Her reflections on suffering reveal profound spiritual insight. Rather than viewing suffering solely as something to be eradicated, she saw it as an opportunity for love. This did not mean she glorified pain or ignored injustice. On the contrary, she worked tirelessly to alleviate physical suffering. Yet she also recognized that suffering, when met with compassion and faith, can deepen empathy, strengthen character, and draw people closer to one another. In comforting the dying, she often spoke of offering them dignity, ensuring that their final moments were marked by love rather than abandonment. Through this lens, suffering became a space for connection and redemption. Mother Teresa's spiritual journey was not without struggle. In her private writings, she revealed experiences of profound spiritual dryness and darkness. There were seasons when she felt distant from God, when prayer seemed silent and faith felt tested. Yet she never abandoned her mission. She continued to pray, to serve, and to trust. This unwavering commitment in the absence of consolation reveals one of her most powerful teachings: faith is not measured by emotion but by perseverance. Inner strength is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to remain steadfast despite it. Her reliance on God was absolute. She believed that divine providence would supply what was needed for the mission, and countless times it did. When resources were scarce, donations would arrive unexpectedly. When obstacles appeared insurmountable, solutions would emerge. This reliance did not negate planning or effort, rather it infused her actions with hope. She worked diligently, yet she trusted fully. This balance between action and surrender became a defining feature of her spirituality. It reminds us that cultivating inner peace involves both responsible effort and confident trust in a greater purpose. Mother Teresa also emphasized the importance of silence. In a world filled with noise and distraction, she believed that silence was essential for hearing God's voice and discerning one's path. Silence creates space for reflection, gratitude, and clarity. It allows the heart to settle, and the mind to focus. Through silence, she found guidance for difficult decisions and strength for demanding tasks. Her example encourages us to carve out moments of stillness in our own lives, recognizing that clarity often arises not from constant activity, but from quiet contemplation. Her spiritual teachings extended beyond formal prayer. She believed that service itself was prayer in action. Every meal prepared, every wound dressed, every comforting word offered became an act of worship. This integration of faith and action blurred the boundaries between sacred and secular. Work was not separate from devotion, it was devotion. By transforming daily tasks into expressions of love, she demonstrated that spirituality is not confined to sacred spaces but permeates every aspect of life. Selflessness was central to her philosophy. She often reminded her sisters that true joy arises from giving rather than receiving. This countercultural perspective challenged prevailing notions of success and fulfillment. In a world that often equates happiness with accumulation and recognition, she found joy in simplicity and sacrifice. Her life testified that inner peace flows from aligning one's actions with a purpose greater than oneself. When ego is set aside and service becomes central, fulfillment emerges naturally. Her teachings on moral clarity were equally compelling. She believed that right action begins with a clear conscience and a disciplined heart. Moral clarity requires consistent reflection, honest self-examination, and alignment with enduring values. She encouraged her followers to evaluate their motives, to act with integrity, and to remain faithful to their convictions even when faced with opposition. This steadfast adherence to moral principles strengthened her leadership and amplified her influence. Mother Teresa's spiritual wisdom also emphasized gratitude. Even amidst overwhelming poverty and suffering, she cultivated a spirit of thanksgiving. She found beauty in small blessings, a smile from a child, the generosity of a donor, the resilience of a volunteer. Gratitude, she believed, transforms perspective. It shifts focus from scarcity to abundance, from despair to hope. By nurturing gratitude, she sustained her own joy and inspired those around her to see light even in dark circumstances. Her life offers profound lessons on cultivating inner peace in daily life. Inner peace, she demonstrated, does not depend on external calm or perfect conditions. It arises from alignment with purpose, from disciplined spiritual practice, and from the courage to act according to one's convictions. Even in the chaos of Calcutta's streets, she carried serenity within her. That serenity was not indifference, it was anchored faith. It was the quiet confidence that she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing what she was called to do. Mother Teresa also taught that spiritual growth requires consistency. Just as physical strength develops through repeated exercise, inner strength develops through repeated acts of prayer, service, and self-reflection. Discipline sustains devotion. Routine anchors faith. By committing to daily spiritual practices, she fortified her resilience and maintained clarity amidst complexity. Her life underscores that greatness is built not on occasional inspiration, but on faithful consistency. Her message to the world was both simple and profound: begin with love. Love your neighbor. Love your family. Love the person in front of you. Spiritual transformation does not require extraordinary platforms, it begins in ordinary encounters. By loving the person nearest to you, by acting with kindness and integrity in daily life, you participate in the same divine purpose she embodied. This accessibility of her teaching is perhaps its most powerful aspect. She did not propose unattainable ideals, she invited ordinary people into extraordinary love. Ultimately, Mother Teresa's spiritual wisdom reveals that faith and inner strength are inseparable from action. She did not retreat from the world to cultivate holiness, she entered the world's suffering with courage and compassion. Her prayer life fueled her service, and her service deepened her prayer life. This reciprocal relationship created a rhythm of devotion and action that sustained her for decades. In reflecting on her life, we see that spiritual maturity is not defined by the absence of struggle, but by steadfastness in the midst of it. Inner peace is not the product of comfort, but of conviction. Moral clarity emerges from disciplined reflection and courageous action. Mother Teresa's teachings remind us that every individual has the capacity to cultivate these qualities. Through prayer, humility, gratitude, and service, we can develop resilience and purpose in our own lives. Her legacy of spiritual wisdom continues to inspire because it speaks to universal human longing. We all seek meaning, peace, and strength. We all encounter moments of doubt and difficulty. Her life assures us that these challenges do not disqualify us from purpose, they refine us for it. By embracing love as a daily practice, humility as a guiding principle, and faith as a sustaining force, we can navigate our own journeys with courage and clarity. Mother Teresa's spiritual teachings illuminate a timeless truth. When the heart is anchored in faith and the hands are committed to service, a single life can radiate hope across the world. Inner strength, cultivated through discipline and devotion, becomes a wellspring of compassion. Moral clarity, nurtured through reflection and integrity, becomes a compass for action. And love, expressed consistently in small acts, becomes a force capable of transforming not only communities, but the human spirit itself. Chapter 9: Legacy of Love and Service. The legacy of Mother Teresa is not confined to a single city, a single generation, or even a single faith tradition. It is a living testament to what one life, fully surrendered to love and service, can accomplish. From the crowded streets of Kolkata to the farthest corners of the world, her influence continues to echo in hospitals, orphanages, shelters, and in the quiet decisions of ordinary people who choose compassion over indifference. Her life reminds us that true greatness is measured not by power or prestige, but by the depth of our love and the sincerity of our service. What began as a small, fragile mission in the slums grew into a global movement of mercy. The Missionaries of Charity, founded with little more than unwavering faith and a fierce commitment to the poorest of the poor, expanded beyond India into countries across every continent. Homes for the dying, centers for abandoned children, shelters for women in crisis, and clinics for those suffering from disease emerged wherever there was need. The growth was not driven by ambition or strategy in the conventional sense. It was fueled by a single conviction, that every human being, no matter how poor or forgotten, deserves dignity, care, and love. The expansion of the Missionaries of Charity was not simply organizational success, it was the multiplication of compassion. Each new convent represented more hands willing to serve, more hearts committed to prayer, and more lives touched by kindness. The sisters carried forward the same spirit that defined their founder: simplicity, humility, and relentless devotion to those society often overlooks. They did not seek to solve every systemic problem of poverty, but they refused to ignore the suffering person standing before them. In doing so, they changed the moral conversation around poverty itself. Before her global recognition, poverty was often discussed in statistics and policies, debated in political arenas, and addressed through large-scale development programs. While those efforts remain essential, Mother Teresa shifted the world's gaze toward the human face of suffering. She reminded humanity that poverty is not an abstract issue, but a lived reality for individuals with names, stories, and dreams. By kneeling beside the dying and cradling the abandoned, she compelled the world to see the poor not as burdens, but as brothers and sisters. Her influence reshaped global perceptions of compassion. Compassion, in her example, was not a fleeting emotion or a charitable donation made from a distance. It was a choice to draw near, to touch wounds, to sit in discomfort, and to give time and presence without expectation of reward. She demonstrated that compassion is most powerful when it is personal. In a world that often rushes past pain, she stopped. In a culture that prizes productivity, she valued presence. In an age of noise, she embodied quiet, steadfast love. The impact of her life can be measured not only in the institutions she built, but also in the countless individuals inspired by her example. Volunteers from around the world traveled to Kolkata to serve alongside the missionaries of charity. Many arrived seeking adventure or meaning, and left transformed by encounters with the sick and dying. They discovered that service changes the one who serves as much as the one who is served. Doctors, nurses, students, and professionals returned to their home countries, carrying a new understanding of dignity and a renewed commitment to serve in their own communities. Stories abound of individuals who, moved by her witness, dedicated their lives to humanitarian work. Some founded non-profits, others entered religious life, and many simply began serving more faithfully in their neighborhoods. Parents began teaching their children the value of small acts of kindness. Business leaders reconsidered how to integrate ethics and compassion into their work. Her life became a mirror, reflecting back to each person the question, "What more can I do to love?" Even those who did not share her religious convictions found themselves stirred by her courage and conviction. She spoke a universal language of humanity. Her insistence that every life has value resonated beyond doctrinal boundaries. She reminded leaders and citizens alike that progress without compassion is hollow. Her words, often simple and direct, cut through complexity and called people back to the essentials of love and service. The influence of Mother Teresa also extended into global conversations about faith in action. She embodied a spirituality that was intensely contemplative, yet profoundly active. Her days were rooted in prayer, but her hands were never idle. This integration of contemplation and action offered a powerful model for those seeking to live out their beliefs in tangible ways. Faith in her example was not confined to private devotion, it overflowed into public service. She demonstrated that inner transformation fuels outer change. Her example continues to guide spiritual and humanitarian efforts today. Organizations dedicated to serving the homeless, caring for the terminally ill, and supporting vulnerable children often cite her as a source of inspiration. Her legacy challenges modern charities to maintain human connection in an increasingly bureaucratic world. It urges faith communities to ensure that their worship is matched by works of mercy. It invites individuals to consider how their daily routines might become avenues for love. The canonization of Mother Teresa affirmed what many already believed, that her life was a reflection of extraordinary holiness expressed through ordinary acts. Yet her sainthood does not place her on an unreachable pedestal. Instead, it underscores the truth that sanctity is found in consistent love. She did not perform grand gestures for recognition. She performed countless small acts with great love. That is the heart of her legacy. Her life also leaves a challenging question for our time. In an era marked by technological advancement and unprecedented wealth in many parts of the world, why does so much suffering persist? Her response was never rooted in despair. She acknowledged the enormity of global problems, but insisted on personal responsibility. "If you cannot feed 100 people, feed one," she famously advised. This philosophy dismantles excuses. It reminds us that we are not powerless. We may not solve every crisis, but we can transform someone's day, someone's hope, someone's sense of worth. The enduring relevance of her legacy lies in its practicality. It does not require extraordinary resources to imitate her spirit. It requires willingness. A willingness to notice the lonely neighbor. A willingness to forgive an old hurt. a willingness to volunteer time at a shelter, a willingness to speak kindly in a harsh world. These small, deliberate choices create ripples of transformation. Her legacy also teaches that love is strongest when it is unconditional. She cared for individuals regardless of religion, nationality, or background. She saw beyond labels and divisions. In a world often fractured by ideology and conflict, her example calls us to unity through service. When we serve those in need, barriers dissolve. We recognize our shared humanity. We discover that compassion builds bridges where arguments cannot. The missionaries of charity continue their work today, maintaining houses of service in numerous countries. The sisters, dressed in their simple white saris with blue borders, remain a visible sign of commitment to the poorest of the poor. Their ongoing presence is a testament to the durability of a vision rooted in love. Institutions may evolve, leaders may change, but a mission anchored in compassion endures. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Mother Teresa's legacy is the reminder that significance is not determined by scale. She often said that we are not called to be successful, but to be faithful. This perspective liberates us from comparison and fear. It invites us to focus on the quality of our love rather than the quantity of our achievements. In doing so, it redefines success as faithfulness to conscience and calling. Her life encourages us to look at our own communities with fresh eyes. Who are the forgotten among us? Where is there loneliness, hunger, or despair that we have overlooked? The legacy of Mother Teresa is not meant to be admired from a distance. It is meant to be continued. Each generation must choose whether her example will remain a story or become a catalyst. As we reflect on her impact, we are invited into a deeper understanding of service. Service is not merely an activity, it is an identity. It shapes how we see others and how we see ourselves. When we choose to serve, we align our lives with a purpose greater than personal comfort. We discover that joy often arises in the very places we once feared to enter. The legacy of love and service left by Mother Teresa is a torch passed into our hands. It challenges us to act with courage in the face of suffering, to remain humble amid recognition, and to persevere even when results seem small. Her life assures us that one person, guided by faith and fueled by compassion, can influence the world in ways that statistics cannot measure. In the end, her legacy is not about buildings or awards, though those are part of the story. It is about transformation of hearts, of communities, of perspectives. It is about choosing love daily, especially when it is inconvenient. It is about seeing Christ, or simply human dignity, in every face. It is about believing that light shines brightest in the darkest places. As her example continues to inspire spiritual and humanitarian efforts across the globe, we are reminded that the call to serve is timeless. The world still aches for compassion. The poor still wait for dignity. The lonely still long for connection. Her life whispers to us that we do not need extraordinary talent to respond. We need willing hearts. May her legacy move us beyond admiration into action. May it awaken in us the courage to love without counting the cost. May it remind us that every act of kindness, however small, carries eternal significance. And may we carry forward the spirit of Mother Teresa by choosing again and again to serve with joy, humility, and unwavering love. Chapter 10: Living the Lessons of Mother Teresa. The life of Mother Teresa was not meant to be admired from a distance, it was meant to be lived forward. Her story does not end with the founding of the missionaries of charity, or with global recognition. It continues wherever someone chooses compassion over convenience, humility over pride, and service over self-interest. The true measure of her legacy is not found in history books, but in the hearts of those who decide that love will be their daily practice. This chapter is an invitation. It is a call to move from inspiration to action, from reflection to transformation. To live the lessons of Mother Teresa is to understand that compassion is not reserved for extraordinary moments. It is woven into the fabric of ordinary days. In a world driven by speed and ambition, compassion slows us down. It urges us to notice the coworker who seems burdened, the neighbor who lives in quiet isolation, the stranger whose eyes reveal exhaustion. Compassion begins with attention. It grows through empathy. It becomes powerful when expressed in action. Modern life often tempts us to believe that impact requires influence, wealth, or status. Mother Teresa's life dismantles that illusion. She began with nothing but conviction. She walked into the streets armed with faith and a willingness to love. Her example teaches us that impact begins with availability. When we make ourselves available to the needs around us, we become instruments of change. You do not need to cross oceans to serve. You need only to open your eyes and your heart where you stand. Applying her principles of service requires intentionality. Service is not an accidental virtue. It is a deliberate choice to prioritize the well-being of others. In practical terms, this might mean volunteering time at a shelter, mentoring a struggling student, supporting a local charity, or simply offering consistent kindness in your daily interactions. The scale of the act matters less than the sincerity behind it. A small gesture offered with genuine love carries immense power. Humility stands at the center of her example. In an age where recognition is often pursued and broadcast, humility can seem countercultural. Yet humility is liberating. It frees us from the exhausting need to prove ourselves. Mother Teresa did not serve to be applauded. She served because she believed every person bore inherent dignity. When we embrace humility, we shift the focus from ourselves to those we are called to help. We learn to listen more than we speak. We learn to value collaboration over control. We learn that leadership rooted in humility builds trust and fosters unity. Ethical leadership is one of the most pressing needs of our time. Whether in business, education, government, or family life, leadership shapes culture. Mother Teresa demonstrated that leadership is not about authority, it is about responsibility. She held herself accountable to the highest standards of integrity. She remained consistent in her mission, despite praise and criticism alike. Living her lessons means leading with conscience. It means making decisions that honor human dignity, even when they are difficult. It means aligning actions with values, not merely with profit or popularity. Empathy is another cornerstone of her legacy. Empathy goes beyond sympathy. It is the willingness to enter into another person's experience and to respond with understanding. In practical terms, empathy requires listening without interruption, withholding judgment, and seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. When we cultivate empathy, relationships deepen. Communities strengthen. Conflicts soften. The practice of empathy transforms workplaces, families, and friendships into spaces of mutual respect. Resilience marked every chapter of Mother Teresa's life. She faced exhaustion, illness, misunderstanding, and immense logistical challenges. Yet she continued. Resilience does not mean the absence of hardship. It means the decision to persist despite it. In modern life, resilience may be required in the face of career setbacks, personal losses, or societal pressures. Her example reminds us that perseverance is sustained by purpose. When you are anchored in a mission greater than yourself, obstacles become stepping stones rather than barriers. To cultivate resilience, we must nurture our inner lives. Mother Teresa's strength flowed from prayer and reflection. Regardless of one's faith tradition, the principle remains: inner stillness fuels outer strength. Setting aside time for reflection, meditation, or prayer strengthens clarity and renews motivation. In silence, we reconnect with our values. We remember why we serve. We regain courage. Without this inner grounding, service can become draining. With it, service becomes life-giving. Living with purpose is perhaps the most transformative application of her teachings. Purpose provides direction. It shapes decisions and priorities. Mother Teresa's purpose was clear: to serve the poorest of the poor. While our specific missions may differ, each of us is called to live intentionally. Discovering purpose requires honest reflection. What moves your heart? What injustice stirs your conscience? Where do your skills meet the world's needs? When you align your gifts with service, your life gains depth and meaning. Everyday opportunities to serve often appear small. Holding a door open, offering a sincere compliment, preparing a meal for someone in need, forgiving a long-held grievance, these acts may seem insignificant. Yet they build a culture of kindness. Mother Teresa believed that great love is expressed in small deeds. This mindset transforms routine moments into sacred opportunities. It invites us to see each day as a canvas for compassion. Moral courage is essential in a world that sometimes rewards indifference. Living her lessons may require standing up for those who are marginalized, speaking truth with gentleness, or choosing integrity over convenience. Moral courage is not loud or aggressive. It is steady and principled. It flows from conviction. When you act with moral courage, you affirm the value of justice and dignity. You become a quiet force for good. Love, as she lived it, was not sentimental. It was steadfast. It showed up consistently. It endured discomfort. To cultivate such love, we must practice patience. We must extend grace to ourselves and to others. We must remember that transformation often unfolds slowly. The commitment to love daily, even when emotions fluctuate, strengthens character and deepens impact. Applying her lessons also means embracing simplicity. In a consumer-driven culture, simplicity can feel radical. Yet simplicity clarifies priorities. It reduces distractions. It creates space for generosity. When we simplify our lives, we free resources, time, energy, finances that can be redirected towards service. Simplicity nurtures gratitude. Gratitude fuels joy. And joy sustains service. Communities thrive when individuals commit to these principles. Imagine workplaces where leaders practice humility and employees practice empathy. Imagine neighborhoods where residents intentionally care for one another. Imagine families where service and kindness are daily habits. The ripple effects would be profound. Mother Teresa's life demonstrates that transformation begins with individuals, but spreads through relationships. Her teachings also remind us that no act of love is wasted. Results may not always be visible. Gratitude may not always be expressed. Yet love carries intrinsic value. When we release the need for recognition, we serve with freedom. We trust that goodness multiplies in ways we may never fully see. Living her lessons does not require perfection. It requires willingness. There will be days of fatigue and doubt. There will be moments when compassion feels costly. In those moments, remember her resilience. Remember that even she experienced darkness and struggle. Yet she continued to choose love. Let her perseverance inspire your own. You are not called to replicate her path exactly. You are called to embody the same spirit within your unique circumstances. Your profession, relationships, and talents provide distinct avenues for service. A teacher shapes young minds with patience and encouragement. A business owner fosters ethical practices and community support. A parent models kindness and responsibility. A student advocates for fairness and inclusion. Every role holds potential for impact. As you integrate these principles into your life, begin with intention. Each morning, set a simple commitment to act with compassion. Each evening, reflect on moments where you served and where you can grow. Gradual, consistent practice builds character. Over time, compassion becomes instinctive. Service becomes joyful. Humility becomes natural. The world continues to hunger for examples of integrity and love. You have the capacity to be such an example. You may never found an international order or receive global recognition, but you can transform your sphere of influence. Your words can uplift. Your choices can inspire. Your actions can heal. Living the lessons of Mother Teresa is ultimately about alignment. It is about aligning your heart with compassion, your mind with integrity, and your hands with service. It is about recognizing that every encounter carries the potential for kindness. It is about believing that one life, fully committed to love, can illuminate darkness. As you close this chapter, let it not be an ending but a beginning. Let it awaken courage within you. Let it strengthen your resolve to live ethically and serve faithfully. Let it remind you that greatness is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone willing to love deeply and act consistently. The invitation stands before you each day. Choose compassion when apathy seems easier. Choose humility when pride beckons. Choose resilience when challenges arise. Choose love again and again. In doing so, you honor the legacy of Mother Teresa not with words, but with your life. Conclusion: a life that transformed the world. The story of Mother Teresa is not merely the biography of a woman who served the poor. It is the testimony of a life fully surrendered to faith, compassion, and unwavering purpose. Her journey from a young girl with a quiet calling to a global symbol of mercy reveals a truth that transcends time and culture. One life anchored in love and strengthened by resilience can transform the world. As we reflect on her legacy, we are reminded that greatness is not defined by power or prestige, but by the depth of one's devotion to humanity. Faith was the foundation of her life. It was the quiet force that sustained her through exhaustion, misunderstanding, and spiritual darkness. Her faith was not abstract or detached from reality, it was deeply embodied in action. She believed that every person carried immeasurable worth, and that belief shaped her every decision. In a world often distracted by division and competition, her faith offered clarity. It affirmed that love is stronger than fear, and service more enduring than self-interest. Her example challenges us to examine the foundation of our own lives. What beliefs guide our actions? What values anchor us when circumstances become difficult? Faith, whether expressed through religious devotion or through an unwavering commitment to human dignity, provides the courage to persist when comfort would tempt us to retreat. Service was not something she did, it was who she became. She chose to stand beside those society had abandoned. She chose presence over distance, tenderness over indifference. In doing so, she redefined the meaning of success. Success, in her eyes, was not measured in wealth or applause but in faithfulness to the needs of the vulnerable. Her life urges us to reconsider our own measures of achievement. When we align our ambitions with service, our work acquires a deeper significance. Every profession becomes a platform for compassion. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to uplift. Service, lived authentically, transforms not only the recipient but also the giver. Resilience marked every chapter of her journey. She endured physical fatigue, organizational challenges, and seasons of profound spiritual dryness. Yet she did not abandon her mission. Her resilience was not rooted in stubbornness, but in conviction. She understood that meaningful work demands perseverance. In our own lives, resilience is cultivated when we remember our purpose. It grows when we accept that setbacks are not failures, but invitations to deepen our strength. Her example teaches us that endurance is a quiet form of courage. It is the steady commitment to continue loving, even when the results seem small or unseen. Compassion was the language she spoke most fluently. It was expressed not in grand speeches but in gentle gestures. She held the hands of the dying. She comforted the lonely. She listened to stories that others ignored. Compassion, as she lived it, was active and deliberate. It required stepping into discomfort and choosing proximity over avoidance. In our own time, compassion remains a revolutionary force. It softens hardened hearts. It bridges divisions. It restores hope. When we practice compassion, we affirm that every life matters. We participate in the healing of a fractured world. Her enduring influence lies not only in the institutions she founded, but in the moral clarity she embodied. She demonstrated that humility amplifies leadership rather than diminishing it. Despite global recognition, she maintained simplicity and discipline. She did not allow praise to distort her purpose. This humility strengthened her credibility. It reminded the world that authentic leadership flows from integrity. Ethical leadership, modeled in her life, requires consistency between belief and behavior. It demands accountability and a willingness to place the common good above personal gain. In an era hungry for trustworthy leaders, her example remains profoundly relevant. Her devotion to humanity transcended boundaries of nationality, religion, and ideology. She saw beyond labels and recognized shared dignity. This universal perspective allowed her message to resonate across cultures. It reminds us that compassion does not require uniformity of belief. It requires recognition of shared humanity. In our increasingly interconnected world, this lesson carries immense significance. When we approach others with respect and empathy, we foster unity in diversity. We build communities rooted in mutual care rather than suspicion. As we summarize her legacy, we see a tapestry woven from humility, courage, discipline, and love. Each thread strengthened the others. Her humility kept her grounded. Her courage propelled her forward. Her discipline sustained her mission. Her love illuminated every action. Together, these qualities formed a life of extraordinary impact. Yet none of these virtues are beyond our reach. They are cultivated through daily choices. They grow through practice. They deepen through reflection and perseverance. Her life also teaches us that transformation begins internally before it becomes external. She nurtured her inner life through prayer and reflection, ensuring that her outward service was fueled by spiritual clarity. Regardless of one's faith tradition, the principle remains universal: inner strength precedes outer influence. When we cultivate stillness, gratitude, and moral awareness, our actions gain depth and authenticity. We act not from impulse but from intention. Perhaps the most empowering lesson from her life is the realization that significance is accessible to all. She did not begin with extraordinary resources. She began with willingness. She responded to a need she could see and trusted that small acts repeated consistently would bear fruit. This truth liberates us from excuses. We need not wait for perfect conditions. We need not possess exceptional talent. We need only to begin where we are with what we have. You possess the capacity for compassion. You carry within you the ability to encourage, to comfort, to advocate, to serve. You have opportunities each day to reflect kindness in words and actions. The scale may differ from hers, but the impact is no less meaningful. When you choose patience in frustration, generosity in scarcity, or forgiveness in conflict, you participate in the same spirit that defined her mission. The world still wrestles with poverty, injustice, loneliness, and despair. These realities can feel overwhelming. Yet her life reminds us that despair is not the final word. Hope is born in action. Hope grows when individuals refuse to look away. Hope multiplies when communities unite around shared compassion. Each act of love contributes to a larger narrative of healing. Embracing your own capacity for courage requires stepping beyond comfort. It may involve volunteering time, advocating for ethical practices in your workplace, or initiating difficult but necessary conversations. Courage is strengthened through practice. The more you align your actions with your values, the more confident you become in your convictions. Courage, fueled by compassion, transforms ordinary individuals into agents of change. Meaningful action does not demand perfection. It demands sincerity. There will be days when energy wanes and doubts surface. In those moments, remember her resilience. Remember that even she experienced weariness and uncertainty. Yet she chose to continue. Let that perseverance inspire your own. Growth unfolds gradually. Impact accumulates quietly. What matters is the commitment to remain faithful to love. As you conclude this journey through her life, consider what it means to live intentionally. Intentional living requires clarity about your values and alignment between belief and behavior. It calls you to examine how you spend your time, how you treat others, and how you contribute to your community. Intentional living transforms routine into purpose. It infuses daily actions with meaning. To serve selflessly is to recognize that fulfillment is found in giving. Service expands perspective. It deepens gratitude. It connects us to something larger than ourselves. When we serve, we discover that joy often emerges in unexpected places. Selfless service does not diminish us, it enriches us. To lead with love is perhaps the most radical call of all. Love in leadership means prioritizing dignity over dominance, collaboration over competition, empathy over ego. It means creating environments where others flourish. Love does not weaken authority, it ennobles it. It fosters trust and inspires loyalty. A life that transformed the world began with one decision: to love without counting the cost. That same decision stands before you. You may not walk the same streets she did, but you walk streets filled with people in need of kindness. You may not found a global organization, but you can build a culture of compassion within your sphere of influence. You may not receive international acclaim, but you can receive the quiet satisfaction of knowing you acted with integrity. Her life is a reminder that transformation is not reserved for the extraordinary. It unfolds through consistent, humble choices. It grows when faith strengthens resolve, when resilience sustains effort, and when compassion shapes character. It endures because love endures. May you carry forward the lessons of faith, service, resilience, and compassion. May you recognize your own capacity to influence hearts and communities. May you choose each day to act with courage and kindness. And may your life in its unique and beautiful way become a testament to the power of living intentionally, serving selflessly, and leading with love. Thank you for reading this book. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to leave us a review. TM Light. Disclaimer. This book was created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. While every effort was made to ensure the accuracy and relevance of the content, readers should note that this cannot be considered professional advice. Readers are encouraged to apply their own judgment and consult experts where needed.